And Kate, you've been out and about. Tell us all the stuff that's going on.
Have been. Yes, I have. I'll talk about Becoming Eliza, which was a performance solo by Anna O'Byrne, which is not on anymore. It was a single night last Saturday, the 26th. And Anna O'Byrne, if anybody remembers, you may do, is a soprano who was playing Christine Daae in Love Never Dies, and she did Phantom of the Opera on the West End. That was her debut on the West End. But this, she has a stellar international career that spans opera and musicals and other concerts, etc. And this particular piece, she's written herself, is about her becoming Eliza Doolittle in Opera Australia's 2016 production of My Fair Lady. And that, you may well remember, Nick, was directed by Dame Julie Andrews herself.
Yes, the absolute source.
Yes, the source of,
yes.
fount of all knowledge. So that's the substance of this solo, self-narrated musical journey. And I describe it as a backstage musical story without the musical. So it is the backstage story of how she developed, got the rehearsal, did the auditions, rehearsed the show, did the show, where things succeeded and failed, etc. So there she is. She's written this herself, Anna O'Byrne, and it's quite cleverly constructed chronological narration. It's her on stage with string trio, piano player Michael Tyack. She's just dressed in a simple loose-fitting purple pantsuit, which is quite a stark contrast to those My Fair Lady gowns, those Cecil Beaton gowns that they recreated. Ones. Oh, yes, gorgeous. So she's addressing her, I would say, doting audience. They've all gone because they love her, directly, and enthralling them with these evocative descriptions of her career. And it includes her huge successes and some soul-destroying failures as well. And she strings it all together with snatches of songs, some longer sections and others, some just lines, reminiscent in a way of what happens in Moulin Rouge, which I'll talk about another fortnight, taking snatches of songs. Not all My Fair Lady, some from musicals and other places. And she peppers the anecdotes with, it's vivid and lyrical language, really, and interweaves excerpts of songs, as I said. She talks about this long and checkered and arduous path to becoming Eliza, playing Eliza. There's an audition process, the waiting. She's in England waiting, living on nothing, thinking about going to do a receptionist job. The initial crushing rejection call, and then a few months later she gets it. Just all a quiver, and then she meets Julie Andrews, I think, who then after that proposes that she does it. Exhilarating, terrifying, all of those things. So gruelling rehearsal process, lots of ups and downs and self-doubt, and she describes how she experiences the fictional Eliza becoming what she describes as a real and constant companion, as though she's an actual person with her.
Is that, unusual in theatre, or especially in musical theatre context, that characters become so strong and alive? Like Hamlet's a living creature.
Yes, I think that's common. I think in musicals, I suppose because she's so much the centre of that entire story, she's on all the time, essentially, most of the time. But I suppose the rehearsal process was so intense because she had Julie Andrews, original Eliza, and she was learning about this character. And she is a singer who does musicals, and the character of Christine Daae is more about the music than about the character, I suppose, whereas Eliza is more about, as much about the performance as the songs. Lots of songs I could have danced all night. Wouldn't it be lovely? My favourite things, etc.
So we're likely to hear it again, because there's once an awful lot of work for one show, isn't it? Yeah.
It has done a little bit of travelling. I think it either has been to Geelong or is going to Geelong. I'm sorry, I should have checked that. But it is a lot of work, and it's possible that she's doing it because she's unable or hasn't had any musical theatre work, but I suspect it's unable at the moment.
Yeah, this is a thing for artists of all. We will hear probably in Music in Melbourne coming up after this that, if you want to do a show, you have to present it yourself, as Philippa would rightly know.
Attest to, yes.
So
having put on duty.
Yeah, it's really tricky because, there's no money for anyone.
No.
And it's really, especially if you have to run it yourself.
And if you've got a biggish cast and musicians, etc.,
and you want to make sure you pay everyone properly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we always knew we were not going to be making any money, but it's still, it's just such a slog.
It's huge. Yeah, and I've produced all of mine. I've got another one that I'm doing a reading for later in the year, a play called Lung, which was written as a radio play for the Seniors Festival, but they lost all their funding. So I'm doing a reading at La Mama end of October, 28th I think it is, and hopefully with a season next year. And that's the only way I can get things up. And I just decided over years that I wouldn't work with more than 2 or 3 actors because it gets too difficult and too much. You don't get enough money.
So really someone like Anna, she'll be putting this on hoping that someone picks it up, so to speak.
Yeah. But people only want to pick up things that are going to make a metric of money.
Yeah.
And
that are cheap to stage.
And there's no because our show got 5-star reviews. All the reviewers were gobsmacked.
That was a
it's never about creative failures. It's about support, money, publicity, getting the word out, etc. But there's another one this is a small company too, but with a lot of people in it that probably has a similar problem because I'm sure they don't. I would assume they don't have annual funding from Victoria or federal. Melbourne Shakespeare Company. Not the Australian Shakespeare Company that does their things in the garden. Their production of Julius Caesar by guess who, Mr. Shakespeare, and it is at 45 downstairs until just tomorrow. Short season, and directed by Richard Murfitt. And as soon as I saw that, who used to be head of directing at VCA, I thought this is going to be good. And I'd describe it as deft and inventive and very streamlined production. And it propels the narrative, and it penetrates the text and the Shakespeare.
It's a little dry text. I mean, I remember studying it. I was only a child, of course.
As was I.
Now, there was a lot of criticism about the casting of Mark Antony in this.
Oh, I don't have any criticism of that. In fact, that Natasha Herbert, no relation, I must insist. We figured, we've talked about it, there's no connection between us. I suspect she might be English Herberts and I'm Irish Herberts, guessing. But it was for me, the centre, the keystone of this entire production was Natasha Herbert's Mark Antony. And when she howls, cry, havoc and let slip the dogs of war... it was the passion and the vocal power. Not only rouses the Romans to action, to violent action, but sends a thrill through the audience as well. So it's, I think she's the centre of it. And really, it may be entitled Julius Caesar, but I think it really is Mark Antony Brutus is the real title. That's
where the drama is.
That's where the drama is. It's their conflict. I mean, there's a lot of dry sort of battlefield stuff towards the end, which Richard has managed in a quite stylised way. So the action beforehand is gallops along, really. It gallops at quite a pace. Escalation of intrigue and treachery and political crisis and murder and divisiveness and civil war under opposing leaders. But we've got honourable but indecisive Brutus and the gifted orator and also a general, Mark Antony. And the Roman public is fickle and violence simmers and governments are fragile. And
so are we talking about today?
I was about to say, do you guess this? So it's really, it does invite comparisons with contemporary geopolitics, really, that sees some leaders surfing a wave of popularity to become Caesar-like autocrats. Thinking of one in particular. I'm thinking of Georgia. Several, really, yes, in different corners of the globe and large countries. Yes. People have installed themselves for very long periods of time, and some who expect to be voted back in, unnamed here. So I think Natasha Herbert's portrayal of Antony is gripping, and it's the beating heart of the production. And she transforms from this grief-stricken friend who's described as, interested in sports and fun, really, to an impassioned orator, and finally to astute and dispassionate military strategist. So she is this centre that's holding this whole narrative together. And her textual interpretation and physical and vocal technique are really impeccable.
So is there something about her being a woman that makes it different, the way the casting?
Well, I've been talking about this all week, Nick, so I'm glad you raised that. I believe that's what theatre is about. People play roles, male or female. So when I read reviews or read media releases or comments about shows that say, oh, look, there's cross-gender casting, I say, yeah, that's what actors do. They play whatever the role is. Now, clearly in Shakespeare's time, the women were played by men, young men. Now we have, in fact, this company had Evelyn Crape playing King Lear last year. I know Mark Antony was played by Robin Nevin some years ago. If the performance is strong enough, we don't think about it. There is no issue. But some of the other cross-gender cast, some of the other women playing male characters were not as strong. But some of the men playing male characters were not strong either. They were not strong enough actors. So there was an imbalance in it was uneven, the quality of the acting. But there was no problem for me. No, I'm a critic. I'm there as a critic, but I'm also a great audience. If I'm immersed, if they carry me with them, I'm right there. If I'm sitting with my jaw dropped, and I think, oh, my mouth's open, I know I am enthralled, and I was by her. It was extraordinary.
If you want a moment of awe, you've got one more chance.
You've got one more chance. Well, tonight and tomorrow. So yeah, exactly. And have we got time for one little quick snapshot? Just something that came into my inbox yesterday. Thank the Lord my inbox is working. Had a terrible problem with the email. Let's not talk about that. I have from a young woman, I believe, Casey Gambling, who's working as part of the Fringe. But this idea, this little tricksy thing that I love the idea of, has started already, so you can do it. All you have to do is ring an 1800 phone number. I'll say it now, 1800 960 929. So instead of telling you the venue, that's the venue. Takes about 10 minutes, maybe 15, depending on how many, numbers you call on this call line. So you're ringing, it's called the Hotline. So you're ringing this pregnancy support, women's support line, the Hotline. It's a health line, and she's had a lot of experience dealing with these issues for a whole lot of reasons. We've all had problems calling any kind of call service and having 15 different numbers and getting nowhere. And there's some hilariously satirical things on it. And you press a button, you choose your own adventure, really. And you go to, take the survey. They don't give you time to answer. You just get a series of insane questions. And some of them actual questions, obviously. Then comments about, if you're ringing about pregnancy support or prenatal support, then it seems to become a sort of pro-choice, anti-choice sort of argument. And then there's one button that I pressed, which is the performer herself talking about her experience. I found it enjoyable, fascinating, cheerfully brief, 10, 15 minutes, and you can ring. She said, yes, please tell people they can ring now, even though it is part of the Fringe.
And is it all recorded, is it?
Yeah, it's all recorded.
Oh, it sounds like fun.
It's a hotline. Yes. So I reckon 1800 960 929, ring it after the session or after music in Melbourne. I'm done.
3MBS is proud to present the next instalment of the 2023 Kauai Live Sessions, featuring acclaimed Melbourne pianists and broadcast live from the Lady Marigold Southey Performance Studio. Yasmin Rowe continues